Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank all of you today. I just have a few shorter comments to make about the amendment in the bill. I stand in full opposition to the bill and the amendment, consequently, because it doesn't actually change the spirit and, I think, the intent of the bill. My friend Senator Kaine just talked about how this isn't meant to disenfranchise any voters. My Secretary of State, Mac Warner, who you've quoted, sat in this room and testified that West Virginia had created a pilot study to make sure that our military who were deployed overseas to be able to allow them to e-vote. And we've been really a lot of accolades to our states to create the e-voting system, and several hundreds of our military veterans or our active military have participated in that way. Our legislature, the state legislature, where traditionally laws about elections have been created and shaped through the years, expanded that right to people with disabilities. And you mentioned people with disabilities. And people with disabilities in West Virginia now can join the pilot study and vote by e-voting. This bill eliminates that. This bill eliminates the ability for those veterans who are deployed overseas and people with disabilities in my state of West Virginia to not participate in the e-voting pilot study and then expansion thereof in our state. Now, we're looking at ways to expand voting, and this bill is eliminating voting on veterans and people with disabilities, but also by using what we all know and have learned, if anything, during the pandemic, is one of the most accessible ways to communicate, and that's through our internet abilities. That's a problem for me. The other thing I think we ought to think about here is if we look at 2020, and the U.S. Census Bureau just came out with recently with the statistics as compared to 2016. We had a 67% voter turnout, the highest voter turnout since 1900 in this country. 17 million more people voted than voted in 2016. 73% of all the voting age folks who were registered to vote voted, which is 2% higher than 2016. The turnout on my state, I'm sorry to say, was lower than the national, but it still was the highest since 1960. And you'll remember the 1960 presidential campaign is where President John F. Kennedy claimed he won the election because he was nominated as the Democrat nominee as the first Catholic because West Virginians voted for him. And they paid him back in the general election as well. It was very, very popular. So a lot of what we do around here, sometimes we say to ourselves, why are we fixing something? Why are we in search of a problem that doesn't really exist? If you look at these statistics, the highest turnouts ever historically. And why is that? Why is that? We were in the middle of a pandemic where it was predicted that more people were going to have trouble voting than ever before, because they were going to be afraid to go to the polling places. They were going to be afraid to go to the early voting places. And what happened? Our states reacted. Our states said, well, in the state of West Virginia, for instance, our primary was moved back a month. That was the state's prerogative to do that. And the governor did that, and it ended up we had a good turnout. The states reacted to different ways to expand more drop boxes, to expand more voting by mail, to expand more and maybe fuller early voting or more voting places. I think in Kentucky they did the big vote in the big convention center for maybe it was the primary election, something they'd never done before. The states know what works in their states. How to get more people to mail in their votes, maybe, or how to get more people to come to their voting center. They don't need us prescribing from here what's going to work from there. And so I think the flexibility that the states have, that we've given them over the years, led to this historic vote that we had in 2020. And what a great thing that is. So I think by narrowing that scope and that focus, I think that we are at cross purposes of what supposedly is trying to be accomplished here, which is to get everybody and as many people as possible to vote. Now, Senator Cruz, who sits over here next to me, stole my line of the day but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's worthy. And another thing we say around here is, well, that just doesn't pass the straight face test. It is impossible for me, as Senator Cruz mentioned, to believe that if we had a vote before this committee with Chairman Blunt and we suggested that the FCC should be politicized and a Republican should be in charge, that with a straight face, you could say you think that was a good idea. There is no way. And I think that's one of the most problematic parts of this bill. On gerrymandering, I was thinking, and I wasn't even going to bring this up, but Senator King mentioned it. I don't fear gerrymandering. I looked back at the statistics when my dad was in Congress in the 1960s. There were 258 Democrats, 176 Republicans. He was always forever in the minority, forever. For the whole 12 years he was there, I would say deep minority in that time. And what happened? Candidates change, philosophies change, parties change, states change, and eventually the representation in the U.S. Congress would change. Isn't that what we're sort of built on? Is the flexibility to go and meet the challenges of the day and to make those changes, change the face of our states politically? I think the states are the place where we want to see this happen, and not here in this room, where we're dictating, no, Secretary Warner, you can't have your e-voting. Your veterans, your folks with disabilities can't have the right to vote. That's been accoladed by every election commission in the country. No, we don't think that's a good idea. That's done. And oh, by the way, you have to buy all voting machines by 2026. That's easy, since the ones we just did through the Help America Vote Act have just now been installed. So, you know, let's look what we're really trying to do here. And these are the reasons I can't support this. And so I'm looking forward to the markup. I know we're going to have a lot of good amendments. I know it's probably going to get testy in here. But I really think fundamentally we're making changes that I think are narrow-minded, are not for the future, and in the end disenfranchise that great flexibility and wonderfully expansive brain trust we all have in our states to be able to make those changes as things change and times change, to be able to get the most people to the voting booths in the best time and have the votes accurately counted. Thank you.
Thank you.